I told ya World Cup was due for an upset, and I was supporting the underdogs, and they did not disappoint me. Yet another World Cup classic, and it was Ireland who came on top of against England. What a game that was! You can say DLS method and all these and that, but it was Ireland who dominated the majority of the game. And yeah, the firecrackers are already on as Ireland has defeated England. At least I will celebrate this because this is a big win. We were talking yesterday about how World Cup is getting very boring. It's getting very one-dimensional. How the smaller teams are not getting an opportunity, but here it is. Here it is. The big result has come for the first time. I'm sure this is beginning of something very big. I have Jaren with me. How do you see this result? We've seen this result previously in 2011 World Cup where Ireland has gone on to defeat England, but now yet again, England falling to a European team. Their record against European teams is zero. They lost to Netherlands in two World Cup encounters in 2009, 2014. Now they lost to Ireland. They are one among four teams, including Turkey, Slovenia, Estonia, who have not defeated a European team in T20 internationals.
Incredible. I mean, it's just there's something about these European teams and England, as you mentioned. England will be really upset. They were never in the game. It always looked like Ireland somehow found their way, especially the way England balled at the start. You felt like it was going to be again, the same. It's going to repeat the same course that you've seen throughout the tournament, where big teams are cruising against the minnow nations. But today, Ireland really fought back, especially towards the later half of the innings, where Irish batsmen made a very good comeback. Some really good cameos. I think really the foundation was laid when Balboni and Tucker together combined and had a great partnership. That's where really they got going, and then everyone else who came in, except with the exception of Dockrell, somehow kept contributing, and they never completely gave away. And that's one thing about the Irish team, especially this Irish team. I think they are showing a lot of fight, a lot of something that you expect these teams to do, right? They want to do well on the stage, they want to do well against the big boys, and as you said, obviously there's a bit of a luck involved as well, because you can argue that in the last 5 overs, the equation was not as difficult as it seemed, at least as the calculation of Duckworth Lewis brought forth. But it still means that Ireland did at least combine together and dominated till the 15th over, because you have to argue, while DLS is something which is unlucky, but the calculation that Duckworth Lewis brings into the picture is to see which team is dominating till the rain came in. And suffice to say, Ireland were, and that's the reason why, as you mentioned, they are the winners. At least till the 15th over, they were the winners, and that's why they declared.
Absolutely. And yeah, Rob Key rightly points that he says DLS is against the spirit of the game. And of course, Englishmen have to say that now the spirit of the game is in question. And of course, DLS is against spirit of the game. And I think Ireland are going to win the World Cup as well. This is it. England is going to bottle it once again in a big tournament like this. And I'm sure this time luck is not favoring England, unlike 2019 World Cup. So I think England and Englishmen have to do something very special. At least some of the boundaries have to go by hitting the bat. At least 5 or 6 runs had to come. That's exactly how they lost the game today. They would have been hoping, they would have got one streaky boundary of an overthrow in the last ball where Delaney was bowling, and possibly that could have helped them to cross the line. Um, Unfortunate for them. And last time around, when Ireland defeated England, India went on to win the World Cup as well. Just putting it right there, just putting it so that you people can also know that it's one of those things. But yeah, let's talk about this win. We saw that against England. We saw England a very scratchy against Afghanistan. We did point that out. They were not
Yeah.
looking very comfortable, but now it proves that I know they got a very tough pitch. Melbourne is not the easiest pitch to go out there and put up a show. You know how tough Melbourne can be. You saw in the India-Pakistan game as well. It's not an easy pitch to bat. The ball was nipping around quite a bit. You can say two games in some of the most toughest conditions. Australia, England were on the receiving end, and one of the games they faltered. One of the games they were scratchy.
Yeah, and that's just odd, isn't it? I think especially today, Ireland really utilized the pitch conditions really well, and the ball nipping around is pretty much what Irish fast bowlers love. We've seen when Ireland played against England, their first ever Test series. That Test series as well, Irish bowlers really trouble the English batsmen on the pitch where the ball was nipping around a bit, and so Irish bowlers, they love bowling on such conditions. And all most of these players, they've played county cricket to some experience, and have some experience there. So It's not like they don't know how to ball in these conditions. Also, the fact that the boundary ropes being further out made it that much more difficult. But I think England would still feel a little hard done with the fact that if rain hadn't come, it's just one of those cases where rain came at the wrong time. But then it's no excuse of how England played. I think except for Moeen Ali, no one really looked comfortable on that pitch. Moeen Ali probably could have been the hero of this innings if the rain hadn't come into play, because he was striking at 200 and he could have played a Marcus Stoinis kind of innings against, how Marcus Stoinis played against Sri Lanka and rescued Australia at the right time. Could have been Moeen Ali's day today, but unfortunately rain came. And but having said that, I think just some really bad shots, some average batting from England, and that really cost them the game. So credit to Irish bowlers, they ball the right lengths, made English batters really, create something out of the ordinary, create something where which could go in their way, but it did not, because it was just average from England, and they really deserve to lose, to be very fair. And maybe if English fans, I think, will look past their bias, they will see the fact that their team were the second best. And as I said, the rain came at the wrong time. Maybe if we had two more overs, the way Moeen Ali was going, things could have been different. But that's how the game of that's how sport is. It's very unpredictable, and these are the kind of wins that allow the sport to really go miles. And I'm sure the Irish fans who are watching home would have loved this game. They'll not forget this victory, and that's where that's where cricket wins on these kind of days. Also, I think Australian fans would be very happy about what happened today.
Absolutely, and that is something which we're already getting out there in the
Yeah.
comments. And Bami Army complaining about rain is ironic, is what she's trying to say. And absolutely, England complaining about rain. Come on, I mean, 2019 World Cup, we saw that. I think India was in the receiving end of a rain delayed or a reserve day kind of a game where the game and conditions changed overnight because of that. And I think this is just Bami Army, trying to call Australia Australia. Nonetheless, I think they deserve a little bit of that now, because always in Australia, India have been in the receiving end whenever they travel to England. Now it's time for England to receive a little bit in Australia, where it doesn't usually rain during summers. So it's quite funny to see that coming. And yeah, cricket, bloody hell, absolutely. Cricket is a funny sport, as they always say. You can never expect what is going to go down. We have seen that with England and against European teams. Now they'll be officially saying that I don't want to play against any more European teams in this kind of format. I bet
Absolutely.
it's not coming home. If there was a Euros for cricket, it was never coming home for them, just like their football team. It would have never come home. It would have been England who would have lost to all these European giants or European minnows in cricket. It would have been funny. I would really like to see a Euros for cricket. What do you say about that?
Oh, it's gonna be interesting, but I mean, you would say ideally England should win it, but then who knows? Maybe it's Ireland and Netherlands who go home with the trophy. But I think that we still have a long way out. I was just reading an article today, I think, where I think the Netherlands captain was really happy about with the Super League. In ODI, he said that it allowed his team to face a lot of big boys, because these teams had to come and visit them and play cricket. Obviously, not going to have the Super League next year, but I think these kind of performances is what really gets the national attention
Yeah.
of the fans back home. I'm sure a lot of Irish Irishmen would be very proud, and there would be some banter across the borders as well. And that's something great. That's what you require. And Michelle is pretty much right. Cricket is that kind of a sport where you don't know what's going to really happen. And this World Cup, as we all said at the start, we saw in the group stage as well. We already had a series of upsets in the group stage. Remember, West Indies is not in this tournament. They have won the World Cup as much as anyone else. I think they won the World Cup more than anyone else, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And they're not playing this World Cup at all. So that's just incredible, isn't it? And that's what we're going to see a lot more, because especially Australia at this time of the year is very unpredictable. It has been. It's not been easy to bat, unlike what people really expected coming to this World Cup.
Absolutely, and this is going to be that kind of a World Cup. We already told that this is a different World Cup compared to any other World Cup, and it just looks like one of those World Cup where you might see more of the surprises. Tomorrow is an El Clasico, which we'll be talking in some minutes from now. But before that, let's talk about this game once again. Where is in Ireland? England really lost. I think it was the bowling. I thought they were very poor with their lengths, and Mark Wood was very honest in accepting that in the right after the first innings, when there was a conversation with Mark Wood. He did come out stating that it was very poor bowling from England. They were all over the place when it comes to the lines and lengths, and Irish batters made them pay. Paul Stirling not get going. Balbirnie did. Balbirnie played a gem of an innings today, and
Yeah.
157 just looked far on the wicket. We saw that against in the Pakistan game as well. 150 plus on this Melbourne wicket looks par.
Absolutely. I think the moment they went above a 145, you knew that Ireland were going to be in business because, as I said, this pitch was moving around quite a bit. There was still, especially I think till the eighth over or so, there was some movement of the pitch. And Irish bowlers are the kind of bowlers, someone like Joshua Little, for instance, loves, gets a little bit of movement, and that's what you need, right? All these great fast bowlers out there, they always, you always hear them say that a little bit of movement on the pitch is what really gets you those wickets, because exaggerated movement, sometimes you have play and miss, but you have this. I think that's probably the way out. That's what Ireland did. They did get Owen Morgan. That's what England did. They required Owen Morgan to win the World Cup. Maybe Balbirnie could get them the T20 World Cup. Maybe that's the play.
Yeah,
But
that is what Rob Key is looking at. I absolutely love that comment. Rob Key's already made his contract to sign Irish players so that they can be part of the English squad. They've got him Owen Morgan. I think it's Balbirnie, Paul Stirling. You don't know. Next T20 World Cup in 2024, Paul Stirling is opening with Josh Butler, and you have the Balbirnie batting at number 3 instead of David Milan. So that's the way to go. And not bad. Harry Tector is another
yeah.
signing. I think playing for Ireland is an audition to play for England. That's what I believe. It's like
But
junior
I
league
really
for
hope it
England.
doesn't stay like that, because then you don't want these talents to go over, and because I feel England have enough
You
talents,
think England
and you
have never
want
got
Ireland to
talent
really,
from across the world? They always
yeah.
look for talents across the world. England have never had their own. It's always been talents from across the world. Kevin Peterson, Jofra Archer, Kid Ben
I
Stokes.
think I think you could make an England Legends 11 out of the South African players.
Yeah, I
That's
think.
just,
I mean, that'll be the most.
especially when
I think we should do a show on that. South Africa versus South Africa. That'll be a good one. But yeah,
English South Africans versus South Africa. Yeah, why not? I think we can
yeah, truly. I
definitely.
mean, I think that's worth it for England.
Yeah.
They've been historically signing all these
Even
Indians.
today, for instance, their best batter arguably was a Pakistani, right? In Moeen Ali.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Next
yeah,
time
but
it'll be.
I think there's some positives though. The fact that someone like an Adil Rashid looked the part today a lot more. He seemed to be coming back to some resemblance of form. It wasn't
Yeah,
obviously an Adil Rashid kind of a performance, but I think 4 out of 24 he will take it. Some confidence will be back with Adil Rashid. He was flighting the ball a lot more. But then, having said that, we did predict, that this Irish team is still weak against spin bowling. We saw what the way they struggle against Deekshana and Vanidhu Hasaranga, the same Hasaranga who went for plenty of runs against Australia. So I think other than that, Ireland, except for maybe Adil Rashid, Ireland really looked on song, really looked good. Even their normal heroes in Mark Wood and Sam Curran were expensive today. I think 8 runs per over and 10 runs per over was really not good, and coupled with the fact that Chris Wokes went for 13 runs per over,
yeah.
that's not their day. And then to come back, England really needed to get going. But I think the moment Ross Butler was dismissed, it kind of felt like England were taken aback a bit and they could never recover. And I think, the ICC win probability also, they never looked like gaining the upper hand. The moment I think, Balbirnie really got going in the later half of the innings, it just felt like England struggled, and England could. I think if England had not lost that many wickets in the early part of the innings, they should have really won this game. And that's where I think that's probably the mantra for this year's World Cup. You don't lose a lot of wickets in the first few overs, because the first few overs are tough, are proving to be tough on any pitch. And we saw against India as well, right? Pakistan lost early wickets, India lost early wickets, but both the teams, what they did really well was have a partnership, stitch a partnership, which did not get a lot of runs initially, but then later on, once the ball got older, the
Yeah.
pitch got easier to bat on. I think that's where David Malan's innings, somewhere maybe it made sense to
I
me in the
thought
early
his
part of
innings
the
was
innings.
good. His innings was good,
Yeah,
but at the
early part
same
of the innings it
time,
was good, but by
but
the time he,
with
yeah,
Virat Kohli, you not see him struggle. He was taking a little bit of time, but then here
yeah,
the thing
yeah,
with David Malan was that he was struggling. He was struggling with the
yeah,
ball pitch short. He was not connecting. He was really looking in big trouble. And not just
yeah,
him. Majority of the English batters were struggling against the bounce. That's something which English batters have had
Yeah, and
historically, but
I
here it
think
was even more evident. Right.
only one who had a strike rate about 100. I think there were only two batsmen, and one of them was Alex Hales, who scored 7 of 5, which is really, to be very honest, you can't measure a strike rate of a batsman or the form of a batsman in 5 balls at all in cricket in any format. And then the only other player is Moeen Ali, who was scoring 24 of 12. Except for that, everyone really underperformed. I mean, David Malan, 35 of 37. Ben Stokes was done by a beauty.
Yeah.
Hand, who was playing just his third T20 I, really came in and what a ball.
No,
Yeah. I
Pion
think
Hand, that
Michael's
ball was
hit the
just
nail
brilliant.
on
I think that's the
hit
ball of the
the
tournament
nail on
so
its
far.
head. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the
what a
ball of the
ball.
tournament. You had
I think
Virat
that
Kohli
that
part of the
ball,
tournament. This has to be the ball of
yeah,
the tournament.
correct. I think that ball in any format is incredible, and to do that in Australia was just brilliant.
But kind of
Uh,
reminded me of Ryan Harris's ball to Alistair Cook, where the ball just nipped.
yeah. I think this one also was on the middle stump. That was on the off stump. That was,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
something very similar, but the ball nipped. It was seam. It was not swing. It was just pure seam.
Yes,
Ball nipped
yes.
and came in.
And
So
that's
it was
where
a beautiful
Stokes
ball.
had no answer. I think Stokes probably was hoping to play that ball outside off stump and the ball just nipped back in. So I think you can't blame Stokes for what happened there.
He
It was
was
just a
stoked.
beauty.
That's all.
Yeah.
He was
He was
absolutely
just
stoked with that ball, and he had no option. That's one of those balls where you just get bowled and you just walk back and say, "Okay, well ball." That's it. You
yeah.
can't
I
do
think
anything
you
about that.
only thing you can do is appreciate the bowler for the beauty and just respect the bowler for what he's done. And those are the kind of deliveries you really hope misses the stump, but it didn't. It
Yeah.
just hit the top of middle stump and it was done. But other than that, I think most of those dismissals were pretty average. Harry Brooks, for instance, was very disappointed with the way he got out. It was just a worst time for him to get out, and maybe to an extent, if he hadn't gotten out because of that distance between Duckworth Lewis, England could have actually gone on to win the match.
True.
Because
I mean, yeah,
this wicket
I thought
there,
England were still in the reaching hand for winning this game.
yeah.
Maybe a couple of shots if Duckworth Lewis would have ever come a little later, maybe England would have won this game by a couple of runs in Duckworth Lewis. But let's see, let's be very honest. Ireland were the better team through a
Yeah, and
majority of
that's
the
what
game.
Duckworth Lewis shows to you as well, Abel, isn't it? It's about which was the dominant team till the 14.3
Yeah,
overs ever balled.
yeah,
Who was the
yeah.
dominant team? It was Ireland. It was definitely
Yeah.
Ireland. I think
Yeah,
there is
and they asked
no,
what happens to this group now. Even
yeah.
I do not have any idea what happens to this group now because this group has been, broad, wide open. There was a definition given to, there's a term given to this group that it's a group of death, and it's absolutely standing up to that. It is really standing up to its reputation to be the group of death. Now, Ireland defeating England was the most unexpected result. Everybody expected England to go through with maybe at least a 4-1, but now if England lose to Australia day after tomorrow, you don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be a virtual knockout between the arch rivals, England versus Australia in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I really hope it's not a rain spoil game, I really hope it's a full game. I'm already hearing it's a sellout, just like the India-Pakistan game. And, Australians and Englishmen, they'll be right there waiting for that game. It is the biggest rivalry in the World Cup after India-Pakistan is what I believe. Because, there's history between these two teams. And in Melbourne, in a big ground like this, you would want these two teams to have a cracker of a game. I know there's already a series which was played where England got the upper hand, but now with Australia winning and England losing and England still struggling to get off the mark, I think there is something very big coming. If England lose that game, all of a sudden the favorites to win the World Cup are on their way back. How do you see that happening?
I mean, and you know what the best part is, right? Then all of a sudden, Sri Lanka gets interested. Even Ireland, if they
Yeah.
really beat, I mean, if they have another win against, they have, I think, Afghanistan next, and they have New Zealand next. Maybe if they win against Afghanistan, and then even come close, against New Zealand, anything can happen now because you never know. I think that Ireland Sri Lanka game is going to be very interesting. I mean, not Ireland Sri Lanka, rather Ireland Afghanistan game is going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Because if it is
Absolutely.
a pitch that we saw today, if it's the kind of pitch that we saw today, Ireland could be really on top. Ireland could really impose a
Yeah.
difficult target on Afghanistan, or really choke Afghanistan
I
if they're
really hope
chasing.
Ireland wins against New Zealand or Australia as well.
Oh,
And that's going
and
to
I'm sure
Ireland making it in the
I,
semi-final of the World
I
Cup.
mean today instance, I think Shinwari's got it right. If that
Ireland
happens,
making the
Ireland could
semis.
be the second team.
Absolutely. I would take that any day. This has to be the greatest World Cup ever if Ireland makes the semi-final. And
I think in
I really
Ireland,
like that. I really like that story of one underdog team
yeah,
making it to the semis. I don't know all the big boys. I like India and Netherlands making from one end. No, India and Zimbabwe and Ireland and New Zealand. That's going to be the epic semis, you know. And imagine, what if it's going to be like one underdog, two underdogs playing against each other in the semis, and one of them making it
yeah.
to the World Cup final. That's going to be
Oh,
perfect.
oh. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the greatest World Cup run since Kenya, I think a long time back when they reached the semi-finals. It could
Hmm.
be just as storied, if not more, because this is more, we haven't seen that kind of run since the modern cricket where, some these richer boards have really professionalized their sport and the younger boards are still making into that scene because they need, you need these kind of runs. That's where the teams really get a lot of interest.
But that's going to really, lift up the game of cricket all across,
Yeah, yeah,
especially Ireland,
absolutely.
Netherlands, and
And
you're going to see
that's the
Frankie
reason
De
why I would
Jong
say that
and
this World
I'm
Cup,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure Memphis Depay and Frankie De Jong will be cheering for Netherlands, and they're going to be like, "Damn, we're going to be supporting for Holland." Ireland was this, what's going to be the best Ireland versus England game? It's going to be in this World Cup, Cricket World Cup, more than in the Football World Cup, is what I believe. I think they have a
Yeah.
chance of meeting in the Football World Cup quarterfinals as it's believed. But I think if they meet in the semi-final of a World Cup, that's going to be just amazing. And Netherlands defeating England once again in a World Cup, that's going to be just perfect.
Absolutely, and it's going to be what's going to be really interesting because Netherlands they have a chance as well. They have done really well so far from what we have seen
I don't want
against
them to do well
Bangladesh.
tomorrow. I just don't want them to do well
Not
tomorrow. That's
tomorrow,
it.
not tomorrow. I think both of us
Fine
don't want
tomorrow. They
them.
can lose tomorrow.
We
They
love
can
a,
lose
we love
tomorrow.
an underdog story as long as it's not against India.
Definitely not against India. Come on. I don't remember any other underdog team defeating India in the recent past, at least. Maybe Bangladesh in 2015 was one, but not
Yeah,
after.
but then, 2007 World Cup, I think that's where Bangladesh was an underdog. I think
Oh
2015
man, I
World
don't
Cup
want that.
also,
I don't want to listen about that World Cup. That World Cup was just a massacre.
that
Let's talk
was
about
such
2020
a,
T20 World Cup. I don't
that is
want to
something
talk
I
about.
think no Indian cricket fan wants to
I
remember.
don't care
That
about
World
in
Cup.
2007. In my opinion, there was just one World Cup which just took place. That was the T20 World Cup.
Yeah,
2007 FIFA
absolutely.
World Cup is irrelevant for me. That's it. That's it. I know 2021 T20 World Cup. I don't know if it ever happened. In my opinion, it never happened. But what was that?
Yeah.
I only knew one World Cup. That is 2022 Australian
Let's
World Cup.
hope. Let's
I
hope. I
hope.
mean, this is still a long way to go. I mean, who knows? It could be an unforgettable World Cup or a forgettable World Cup for Indian fans. You never know.
I believe the former than the
I think
latter. So
tomorrow, especially, even though the weather forecast really looks good, and we'll speak about it later on. But tomorrow, if I think tomorrow India doesn't, I mean the world, we have a full match at least on our hands as of now. I think Sydney overall, it's not there isn't much rain compared to some other places.
man, I don't
Sydney,
care if there's rain. Just play cricket in rain. I've played in gully cricket in rain. Come on, guys. For Indian matches, you need to put some covers on top. Just play the cricket in rain. I don't care now.
I
Whatever
mean, it's going to be
happens.
interesting to see. I mean, how if cricket really is going to be able to beat rain or make sure that rain
You know
becomes
what?
a not
There
becomes
was
a factor
there was
in
a
cricket.
roof stadium just 2 miles away from Melbourne Cricket Ground. They probably could have considered that, as a reserve venue. It's not too
Yeah,
far away, just 2 miles away.
who knows? You could have just had the buses set up, the team buses set up. Just take the game all the way to that stadium. Shift
Yeah,
everything there.
yeah. Melbourne Renegades do play cricket there, so I don't see that being a
I mean, I
unused
think that could
venue.
be something. You could have like you have cricket nowadays. Where you have spider cams already on top, and if it hits the ball, it's a dead ball, and you
Yeah,
move you ball another delivery, right?
yeah.
But
Absolutely.
it's definitely a opportunity for a lot of controversy because you would have sometimes you would really have the ball hit the
It
net like.
doesn't matter about controversy as long as there's a game. Now, when
Yeah,
there is
yeah,
no
exactly. You
game, that's
rather have
frustrating.
controversy than have a game, right? Than not have a
Yeah.
game. Sorry. I mean,
Come
imagine,
on,
but
when
then
in
these kind of things
2022,
will
and
happen.
I
Something like
really
a
think for big
yeah,
tournaments like the World Cup, you need roof stadiums. And I don't want
yeah.
World Cup in England anymore. I mean, I'm sick with the World Cup and any big tournaments in England. I'm not gonna see any more World Cups in England. That's just a sick venue to keep it. And I don't want this kind of World Cups getting hampered by rain, man. How many of the major World Cups have you seen in world stage getting hampered by external factors? Come on, it's the biggest
And
of
it hurts
stages.
cricket fans, right? You don't want those kind of things because especially World Cup, you pay a lot of money, you come to watch 120, 240 balls, you want to watch each and every delivery, and then the rain comes, it's just a spoiled sport. No one really wants it. I think the players don't like it because then the mindset and the momentum is lost. And it really, and you've seen that happen, right? For example, I think the World Test Championship final,
Yeah.
India really got going, and that's when the rain came in. That's why the momentum was broken, and then New Zealand
Hmm.
took that mantle up, took the momentum up. So these kind of things
Yeah.
really hurt teams, especially in big stake tournaments. Bilateral tournaments, I think it doesn't matter as much. But you're right. I think roof stadium is probably the only way out because I don't think this cricket ball and the pitch because they're so traditional as a team.
Yeah.
Because like for example, football or hockey, for instance, is played on AstroTurf, so rain doesn't create as much nuisance. Or
Hmm.
football, for instance, you don't actually worry about rain as much because whatever happens, it affects both the teams, right?
Yeah.
But cricket is one sport where if it rains in the second half or the first half, one of the teams are really affected. It becomes much more easier to chase because Duckworth Lewis really supports team chasing because teams chasing can really play and kind of pace their innings and understand and saving wickets is what's more important.
Yeah.
But that's where I think England really faltered today. They should have seen this coming. That's something I feel. They should have been really careful of trying to save the wickets up. I don't know exactly what the Duckworth Lewis situation was, but two wickets, David Milan and Harry Brook, really hurt England to a large extent. And
Yeah. True.
so this is something that maybe ICC should look forward to because I think roof stadiums are the only way out. Obviously, you're going to have some matches where the ball hits is skied in the air and it hits the roof, becomes a dead ball, or a last ball six becomes a no ball, and then batsmen lose their confidence in the next delivery. These kind of things will happen, but it's better than having a match like I think Bamiami would have taken a roof stadium today over any other day.
Bamiami shouldn't talk about rain. That's it. Bamiami is one fan club who doesn't deserve to talk about rain because their own country has been, definitely affected by rain in these big moments, and we've
But
been the
Abel, I think that's the reason why you see this year's World Cup, there are 13 teams. One of them is definitely rain.
yeah. I hate that.
Whoever's the champion, for example, if Australia is the champion, they'll really thank rain for their success.
Oh,
They
yeah,
should.
absolutely. Australia, no, this has really helped Australia in a big way.
Yeah.
Their win yesterday was important. But now the thing is that game on Friday is what everybody's eyes are set on. That is gonna be the deciding factor for this group. And also remember today another game was supposed to be played, but it was a washout, which means New Zealand still remain on top of the group with 3 points, but Afghanistan also get off the mark. The only group that all the teams are off the mark is this group, and you don't know what's going to happen if Afghanistan can get an upset here and there. Now that's very scary, right? Now that's what we had been talking about. You don't know what's going to happen in this group is wide
Correct.
open. Anybody can qualify. There's no clear cut top two for
And
this
I
group.
think
That's why I love this
looking at
group.
the pitch today, the way it was behaving, it would have been much more exaggerated under the lights, and New Zealand could have really ran all over Afghanistan because it looked like a pitch where fast bowlers of the kind the kind that loved a bit of movement of the pitch, and even though they don't have the pace to trouble batsmen, that bit of movement can really like imagine Bolt, Tim Saudi bowling with a new ball on that pitch could have caused a lot of troubles for Afghanistani batsmen early on in the innings. And you could have seen maybe a quick fire, a quick innings for us for Afghanistan, where in 10, 11 overs the match is done. That could have really happened today, but I think Afghanistan was saved against that kind of outcome being coming up for them, and Afghanistan will be really happy. But for New Zealand, the only thing that really goes their way is the fact that they have a absurd net rate of 4.450, and so even if they've lost, technically I would say this is a loss for New Zealand, especially because when you have only two, when you're getting 3 points, but you're losing, like I think New Zealand would say that they've lost 1 point, right, and you're only getting 2 points out of a match.
Yeah.
Because unlike football, where you if you draw the match, you get one point, but if you win, you get three. The
Yeah.
difference is a lot more, but here there's only difference of 1 point, so you never know what can happen because you're gonna have a lot more rain curtail matches in the future as well. So
True.
that's where it becomes even more closer because there's only 2 points that you get as a winner.
True. I mean, I also think the same. For example, at least for these kind of games, you can look at maybe a
Maybe
reserve
if
day.
it's rain curtail, you should have 0.5 or something like that. Makes more sense to me.
Yeah, at least,
But
at least.
then it hurts New Zealand even more when that happens. So
I mean, they should find a way out of this rain conundrum because it's been
yeah,
affecting
yeah.
big tournaments for such a long period of time. We've seen that with South Africa. They've been in the receiving end for way too long now. And at least they'll be hoping tomorrow it doesn't
And
rain.
white ball cricket, you really can afford roof matches because even if you don't have sunlight coming in, white ball is pretty visible. You can play rooftop matches in pink ball test matches and white ball formats easily.
I mean, yes, you can still do that. But what I also believe is that one way they should find a way to actually look at the scheduling. We've seen that in F1 do that, where they look into days where they're looking to, form a,
Yeah,
buy a
yeah.
forecast as to what are the days in which it's going to rain, then schedule games in such a way at least they
Mhm.
will get better forecast results, especially when it comes to rain. I know if there's a
Yeah.
sudden cyclonic storm, you can't do anything about it. But other than that, you do get an accurate weather report at least a month or 2 months before. But then
Mhm.
logistics is an issue where ICC will have to be more proactive in these kind of things.
No,
At
I
least have
think
a
it's a
venue
very good
ready.
place to look at, right? Because F1 is probably one other modern sport which really is affected by rain because the
Yeah,
tracks become really slippery. It's not easy to drive on those tracks. So I
yeah,
think and if you look at the logistics as you mentioned, Abel, but then ICC has much less logistic costs than some of the F1 teams because
yeah.
they have to transport their machinery, which is much more expensive than wooden bats and stumps and kits that ICC transports.
Yeah, true, true, absolutely. I totally agree with you on this. And maybe with more money coming into the sport, I believe we can be
Yeah.
more proactive in terms of taking such decisions. And ICC as a board will have to be more proactive. You don't want World Cup games getting affected because you don't know. Tomorrow, what I'm seeing is that the early parts of the day in Sydney, it's going to be rained out. So, which means South African game will be again affected. So, South Africa will now be really hoping now what's wrong with us? What have we done wrong historically, generationally? To come to a World Cup and to get and to get rained out in such a way. You've seen that in '92 World Cup where South Africa came to
Oh,
Australia for the first time,
yeah.
2003 where it happened, and now in their own backyard. That's what happened there. I don't know. Now South Africa will be really blaming the rain gods, and now they'll be hoping for rooftop stadiums and anything else. They'll at
Yeah, I
least
think
bring their
maybe
own roof.
who knows, maybe South Africa is the first country to come up with rooftop stadiums when
And
World
I
Cup
bet
happens
they will.
there.
Robke says it's the effects of Brexit why England have lost to Ireland. I mean,
I think
yeah,
post and pre-Brexit, you guys struggled against European teams. So
yeah. I think it's post and pre effects of Brexit, and now all the European nations want to trigger you even more. So don't play against any more European nations. I'm looking for a Scot. I remember Scotland defeating England in a one-day match very a
yeah,
couple of years
yeah.
ago. So I think the European teams love England. There's
I
an
think there's
extra
a comment
extra bit of
related to
motivation.
that in the live as well. It was Satyajit who mentions maybe Scotland could have pulled off another defeat
Yeah,
against.
which Scotland was there to defeat England, absolutely. And I think that was definitely there in the radar, because Scotland was playing some really good cricket, and with
Yeah.
Scotland in the form they were in, they were upsetting some big teams. And last World Cup they did upset Bangladesh, so you don't know with Scotland, they can go on to defeat any team on their given day, and that's why European teams will be wary, especially of. I think England will be very wary of European teams, at least in the World Cup stage. Maybe in bilaterals, they are never a pushover. You can never defeat England in bilaterals; they're a different beast. But when it comes to England, I think the pressure is also now taking a toll on England. What do you think about
Also,
that,
this
Jared?
is
Because
yeah.
yeah,
This is the
because
first
you're
World
seeing
Cup.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2019 onwards, England has become favorites in white ball format. We haven't seen that with England cricket team for quite some time. Because England traditionally loves playing the red ball format. They haven't been ultra aggressive in the 50 overs. You don't have a lot of English homemade talent. You can talk about Kevin Peterson all you want, but he was a South African cricketer,
Yeah.
and he was a different beast. He was someone who was very much different from traditional English cricket, and that's the reason why a lot of English media really went after him whenever he made a mistake.
Yeah.
But that's a different story altogether. But England traditionally were not as aggressive as uber aggressive as they are right now, and I feel I think that uber aggressiveness is kind of costing them now in this World Cup when the ball is moving quite a bit. We saw that against Afghanistan as well. They
Mm.
struggled to get going. The moment they slowed down and started to play a bit more, their uber aggressiveness, as to speak, was curtailed a bit by these English batsmen. That's when you saw them play well. Today as well, they did not get going initially because I think the ball did quite a bit. And even in test matches, we're seeing that when the ball is doing a bit, England are struggling. So there's something there, something that the ball moving is a bit of a nemesis for English team in the modern era. In the past few years, something I think English cricket board will be looking into because I think now England is really moving onto those pitches where the ball isn't moving as much, even in test matches. So this is
Yeah.
something that we're seeing with English cricket team. It's becoming a nemesis for them if the ball is moving a bit. So that is something that England has to really correct. And we need to see
True.
what kind of plans they come up with.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they counter this. Now, for England to go ahead in the World Cup and to go deep in the World Cup, they would want some comprehensive wins to have some confidence. Now they've lost one, won a scratchy game. That's not good signs. And at the other end, for New Zealand, they'll be very disheartened with the result they've had today when it comes to getting a rain washout against Afghanistan. This could have possibly been easy 2 points for New Zealand. Not disrespecting Afghanistan, but the conditions were definitely New Zealand, like, the swing ballers would have definitely come
Yeah,
into play, as Jen rightly mentioned. This was one of the days where Tim South and Trent Bolt would have really enjoyed bowling in the Melbourne conditions because rain was there, the pitch was green, and also you never know. Afghanistan also could have come into play because this is already a used wicket, and on top of that, you don't know with the kind of with Rashid Khan and Mujibur Rahman having a couple of good games, uh, you know, possibly New Zealand would have been in trouble as well there. So this was a result both the teams would have not liked, especially Afghanistan, because they had a loss first up against England and they would have wanted to create something out of this game. Now that's gone. Now, which means they get 1 point. Maybe they'll be happy with that. You don't know. 1 point
yeah.
is
I
better
mean,
than
I
saying
think
nothing at all.
for me, Afghanistan will be happier of the two teams. If you have, I mean, I think both the teams, they both have cricketers who love playing the sport, who are very driven cricketers on both sides. And I think no cricketer would loves to see a washout. But if you really have to see, I think out of the two teams, New Zealand would feel they have dropped 1 point rather than gain a point. Well, Afghanistan would feel somewhere they have gained a point, at least on paper. The kind of conditions that we saw, if I was a betting man, I would bet on New Zealand 99 out of 100 times. Today,
Yeah.
that's the reason why I think also seeing the first match, right? We saw what Netherlands, rather Irish bowlers did when they got a bit of moment early on. I think it depends on who bowled first. The first innings really matters on these pitches. That's where cricket has really gone back 2 years, 3 years, where scoreboard pressure we're seeing somehow is putting teams
I
under
think it's
pressure.
only on the World Cup stage. I've seen that in 2019 World Cup as well, where we
Yeah.
predicted 350 games, and we saw
Yes.
250
Yes.
being a very good score. But I think the occasion of the World Cup is getting to the teams, and I've
Yeah,
always
and I
said,
think somewhere you're right. I think somewhere where there's no advantage of chasing. Like we saw UAE, there was a lot of advantage. Chasing was pretty much the silver bullet
yeah,
in
it's
that World
conditions
Cup.
and the World Cup. It's both
Yeah,
have come
but
together.
in this Australian team, in this Australian pitch, the pitches haven't been very different in batting first and bowling first.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
also
where I
because
think scoreboard
the
pressures has
pitches have been
put teams
very
under
fresh.
pressure.
Pitches are very
Yeah,
fresh. At the start of the
yeah.
season in Australia, pitches are unused. It's green out there. Most of the wickets are green, which means fast bowlers are getting to be in the game for majority of it. And you saw the ball seaming around in Perth until the end of 39th over, which means at the end of the 19th over, or even in that England versus Afghanistan game, and also in Australia versus Sri Lanka, the ball was moving around constantly. Even the 20th over where Pat Cummins was bowling, the ball was nipping around, which means there is live grass out there. And also in today's game, the ball is moving around quite a bit. Throughout the course of the game, you saw the ball moving around, which means there's a lot of grass out there in the wicket, which means
Yeah,
fast
and
ballers are there
Melbourne.
in the game. There's an even contest between bat and ball, which you'd like to see. You don't want one-sided affairs where bat is totally dominating and toss is deciding the factors of the game. So this World Cup is an exception where I think captains will believe losing the toss is a better way to go than to win the toss,
Yeah.
because it's still a confusing matter. You don't have a pattern as to if you win the toss, you win the match, or if chasing is a better option. Because
Mm.
if you lose a couple of wickets up front when you're chasing, your team is going to be under tremendous pressure. You saw in the India versus Pakistan game where India
Yeah.
were put under tremendous pressure. 160 in any other ground in the world, you will believe is very below par. In T20 game, 160 is not good enough. But in Australia, 160 on wickets like this, it is very good. And you believe it's just par. You saw Babar Azam making that statement in the toss where he says he was looking at 160, 170 to be the par. And I thought 160 was par on that wicket. Now,
Mm.
considering whatever has happened, I thought India considered 20 or 25 more than what India should have ideally conceded. So
Yes.
that's why I
Yes.
believe Australian World Cup is a different World Cup, different beast altogether. 175, 180 will be a winning total in these wickets.
Yeah, and yet one of the users, one of the viewers, early on, I think after the group stage when we were previewing the Super 12, he also mentioned that, there was a comment where he mentioned, there could be more balance in this year's World Cup with the bat and ball, and that's what we see. Today also, is Melbourne is a drop-in pitch. I think these
Yeah.
drop-in pitches tend to be fresh compared to, some of the traditional grounds, because these pitches are always, they're dropped in, as the name suggests, right? And they're prepared elsewhere. They're not prepared in the stadium, they prepared elsewhere and then dropped in before the match. That's pretty much
Yeah.
what the drop in pitches. So these pitches, they seem to be more fresh compared to others. We saw that in the group stage as well, where power play was becoming much more difficult to score in, and bowling teams were really on top in the power play overs. The moment if teams really preserve the wickets after the 10 overs, we saw teams suddenly score 100 runs in the last 10 overs or
Yeah.
111, I mean 110, 120. We saw that again in the India-Pakistan game where India scored at average of, I mean, at a run rate of 11.5 in the next 10 overs after only
Yeah.
scoring 45 in the first 10. So this is where I think this is probably the mantra. If you're chasing, would you really need to do not only chase, if you're batting, would your target should be to not give away too many wickets in the first 10 overs, score at a steady rate, not look to score as much as preserve your wickets, and then the last 10 overs capitalize. We saw Sri Lanka as well, for instance. Sri Lanka really struggled in the first 10 overs against Australia, but then towards the end, they made a comeback of sorts. Australia as well, you can argue that, even though it took them a lot more time, we could argue that, when Marcus Stoinis came to bat, it seemed like the pitch wasn't doing as much as in the first 10 overs for when Lahirul Kumara was bowling in the first 10 overs. So that's probably where I think this is probably the mantra in this World Cup. And Abel is
I
right,
think.
because, this is the idea, right? Because you can't max utilize his first 10 overs, then automatically I think you are reducing your target, reduces 40 overs, 40 runs or so from what you
Mm,
expect in Australia, where
mm.
I think where Australia and England, played in traditional pitches. On Australia, you saw scores of 180, 190 being a good score. But I think because you're losing those 20, 30 runs in the first 10 overs, in an attempt to save your wickets, you're kind of coming down to 160, 170 being a par score.
Absolutely, and Natasha says that dropping pitches is when England is dropping points, and I think so. England are dropping pitches, dropping points on any of these wickets now. In Perth, also you saw that they were almost going to drop points even there. If Afghanistan would have got 140, I bet they would have struggled there.
Correct.
Today they drop points in a
And today,
good
I think,
game to Ireland.
today we sort of saw what could have happened if Afghanistan could have scored 150, 145.
Yep, yeah, truly, and that's what could have possibly happened with England there in Perth as well. And I thought 157 was a very good score in Melbourne. You saw that with
Yeah.
Pakistan. Now that's where England will be like looking to reassess themselves because in a couple of days time they have a game in the same ground, so they would want conditions to be a little more better than what it was today because they don't want Hazelwood to be running all across you. Hazelwood can
Yeah.
be very dangerous in these kind of wickets. And you saw that in the Ashes Test series as well, where Scott Boland was giving them a tough time in Melbourne, and
Yeah.
that's the same thing which could possibly happen again. Pat Cummins also will come into play if the wickets are going to remain lively, and also Mitchell Stark can be dangerous if there is anything off the wicket, and if it's a fresh wicket given for that game, you can expect a lot more drama happening in that very game against Australia on Friday. All the eyes are set for that game because that's going to be one of the biggest games of this year's World Cup. Last year, you saw England absolutely decimate Australia in that group stage game where England were all over Australia, and still Australia went on to win the World Cup. That's a different case. But England will be hoping they repeat the same, but at the same time, I believe it's not going to be easy. Last World Cup, it was all about toss, winning the toss, putting a team under pressure first up. Whatever the score was, you would back yourself to chase it down. Dubai also got grounds were slightly on the smaller side compared to Australia.
Yeah.
But this
Yeah.
time, bigger boundaries, ball nipping around quite a bit with freshness in the wicket, and and it's also very cold to play cricket. I know England will be pretty happy with that, but still, it's still very cool to play cricket in Australia at this point, which means fast ballers are in the game even a lot more. The ball is swinging around quite a lot. What do you have to say about this? Because conditions do play a part. I thought
Yes.
this would have ideally suited England more than any other team, but then
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Well,
ones who are on the receiving end of a lot more struggle in this World Cup.
but I think that's the reason why today's match, because their opposition was Ireland. Irish batters were more used to such conditions. They were
Yeah,
equipped to play in such conditions. That's the reason why I think they scored 157.
yeah,
That's where you saw Afghanistani batters really struggle because when the ball was moving around a bit more. Although to be fair, Afghanistan also had to face a lot more pace off the wicket because they're playing in Perth, and the
yeah.
ball we saw Mark Wood was really making the ball talk. But today, I think the ball wasn't bouncing as much, the pace wasn't as much, and that's pretty much what you expect in Melbourne compared to Perth. But England would be really disappointed. They are used to such conditions. Even though Ireland is a very good opposition to. I mean, it's not a very good opposition to play on such pitches, but you would still say that England would back themselves to score that 157, or at least score six, 7 more runs than what they did by the end of 15th over, and that's where England really lost the plot. And also, that Australia England match. If England hadn't lost today's match, they would be the more confident team coming into play.
Yeah.
But now Australia will feel more confident because they kind of dug themselves out of a hole against Sri Lanka, and England couldn't. So that's where Australia has the upper hand because they're playing in Australia. Also, as you mentioned, I think after that Melbourne defeat in the Test series, I think they're coming to Melbourne after that is the last match they played in Melbourne, if I'm not wrong. And
Yeah.
that was pretty much, that was just England was just in shambles in that match where Scott Boland really ran all over them and could have a repeat of that match.
Yeah, with this English team, even we've seen it in Test matches when the ball moves
Yeah,
around quite a bit, they do struggle. That's why you saw different pitches given to this English team through the course of through the course of English summer this year,
yeah.
and that would help their batting to come good as well to chase
And
scores on
Josh
day five.
Butler is one of the biggest, is guilty of such mistakes a lot more. That's the reason why he lost his place in the Test squad. Because before, when before in those pitches where pitches used to be flatter, Josh Butler
And
used to be an
remember,
explosive
when the
160
English white ball revolution took place, one thing which they made very clear was to give flat surfaces in England.
Yeah,
And that's what helped this team to play a certain brand of cricket. From 2015 to 2021, if you look at the pitches for white ball games in England, it's been flatter, it's been easier to bat on, which meant
yeah.
that their scores of 350, 340 could be easily posted by the teams batting first in the 50 over format. And T20 200 was a norm in England because of the flatness in the surface. That's one thing which English team management demanded to the English board, to give flatter surfaces for the white ball format to enable batters to come good, and also helped in their grassroots system as well, where they were building batters who are
Hmm.
power players because of the pitches, which meant that they gave a lot of confidence for these power players who could play through the line, who could come into the game a lot more. That's what has helped this team to grow. Now, wherever they've gone, especially when they came to India as well, they got surfaces which suited their style of play. But now in Australia, they're getting different kind of surfaces, which is so unlike the kind of surfaces which they were getting in subcontinent or even in England for the liking. So that's what not helped this English team to play a certain brand of cricket. Now, how is that going to really affect their World Cup journey, Jared?
It's going to because that has been their plan, right? We've seen this England team. We've spoken about this, this idea to go after the bowling straight away, and that's worked wonders in T20. But now it's going to really hurt them because they have to adapt, and it's not going to be easy for Alex Hales and Butler, the top order rather, to really be, because they're going to play against the nature, their better nature, where they love to go after the bowling. They now have to they would now have to restrain themselves to go after the bowling and try to, I'm sounding very much a traditionalist, but that's the way you have to play on these pitches. It's not going to be easy to play, games on these pitches because we're seeing that quite a bit. We're seeing performances come a lot more from the middle order and the lower middle order than from the top order. That's been the norm, I think, this World Cup, where we see, I think, today, I mean, straight from Namibia match where Jan Freiling, who came in the lower middle order, took the game away from Sri Lanka, or even yesterday's match, where of Australia and Sri Lanka played. It was a lower middle order who really took on the bowling, where we had Karna Ratne and Asalanka who came in low, who played the later overs in the first innings, and then Marcus Stoinis, who came in the later overs for Australia, play better than the top order, right? Today, I think, except for Balburney, even Balburney, to be very honest, never got going until after the 10th over. So that's where I think you really need to save your wickets, and top order is going to really struggle. And that's what we're seeing this year. I think Virat Kohli, for instance, was really wise enough to Virat Kohli and Hardik Pandya both to really, save their overs and play in the last few overs. Even Shan Masood, for instance, did the same, right? We saw batters who came in the top order really struggling.
Yeah, true. A couple of them are asked that whether these kind of tournaments are affected by rain. Absolutely. We were talking about that where ICC should possibly look at scheduling in a better way, and not just that, introduce roof to these kind of stadiums for these big encounters.
Yeah.
Or maybe, find an alternative or give reserve days for these games not to get
I think
affected.
reserve day should have been there. That's something you expect from World Cups of this level. I don't
Yeah.
know why there's a reserve day.
I mean, reserve days are so important in World Cups. At least don't give for bilaterals. It's okay for bilaterals to get
Yes,
World Cup,
yes,
but
absolutely.
World Cups, every game is so important for which
I
helps
think
each
probably
team
the only
qualify.
reason I think for the tournament, I mean, rather for the tournament in England, we had reserve days, but here I think ICC when they were planning, they did not expect the kind of rain, the spell of rain that we're seeing, because
Yeah.
it's winter right now in Australia. You don't expect this kind of rain. I think there is a formation of sorts of wind formation that's happening in the oceans nearby in Australia. I think it's called. I
Nina.
think it's called El Nina, right?
El
El
Nina.
Nina weather formation, which is the reason why such rain spells. That's the reason we're seeing such rain spells. But maybe at least cricket. Maybe it's time to maybe introduce something called a retractable roof. We've
Yeah.
seen that in some of the sports where retractable roof is. I think
Even
the
in
Qatar
football,
World
we have
Cup.
seen some of the footballs
Qatar
even
World
they
Cup I think
got
has a retractable roof. If I'm not wrong, Abel.
NS is one sport which has got that, especially for
Yeah.
Wimbledon, because it's played in
And some
England,
of the bigger
Melbourne.
countries, right? I think India, Australia, England can definitely fund such kind of endeavors. I know you can't expect such endeavors from Netherlands or Sri Lanka, where the boards because DRS, for instance, took a lot of time to come to these countries. But I think retractable roof, the big three definitely can go for it, and especially countries like England, where the Barmy Army who don't want to see rain should really try and would really hope
I think
that
England is
retractable
one country who really needs retractable
yes.
groups. I know, I'm pretty sure when you're
Test
having
matches,
test
it's not
matches, you can't
possible.
have it. But
Yeah,
at least if you're hosting more of these ICC tournaments in future, you would need retractable roofs to continue the games. You don't want these kind of games getting affected by rain. Come on, you saw it
exactly.
in the
No one
last
wants that.
2019 World Cup, and you saw today now already two games washed out because of rain in the World Cup. Like that's a lot of games. You don't know how many more games are going to get washed out in the future. And if there are more games getting washed out, which also means it's just a huge joke on the entire tournament. The entire tournament is going to look very funny at the end of the day, and ICC are going to really take the brunt of it from a lot of cricketing boards because they don't want to be coming to a World Cup and their hopes getting drained out because of a
Yeah,
rain which is so unpredictable. And at least find a reserve venue like roof. In Melbourne you have a roof venue which was just 2 miles away from the Melbourne cricket ground. Possibly they could have looked at that avenue as well before coming up with something like that. Now that's going to be it from us for tonight. We're going to be coming maybe tomorrow morning before the India's game to talk about the fantasy picks and to discuss a preview on India's game. And also, we'll be doing a preview of the South African game, which would have taken place by then. Hopefully, if the rain doesn't affect that game, or else South Africa, I would just say you're just unlucky, man. I would say
I
that they're
mean
the most
that could
unluckiest
knock
team.
them out. That could potentially knock them out if tomorrow's game is also
Yeah, and
washed
Pakistan
out.
would be really hoping it's a rained out game for South Africa in Sydney. But for India, they'll be up against Netherlands. Indian fans will be really hoping there is no hampering of the weather for that game at least. It's okay if the weather hampers any other game tomorrow, but not that game. So Indians will be looking to continue the momentum from where they left off against Pakistan. But yet again, you saw in this World Cup, you can never predict against any team. But you would say India are better off, against a stronger, with the Indian stronger batting lineup they've got and also bowling lineup fighting at the right time. You would give India the better of chances to come up against
Yes.
Netherlands because there's a momentum with this Indian team now after that win to go on to do well. Let's see what happens. Good night from all of us. Come back tomorrow, all of you, and play the fantasy corners with Boom 11. This is your opportunity, and to play the predictor, which we have recently introduced with Boom 11. You can go out there and predict for each match. If it's India versus Netherlands, South Africa versus Bangladesh, and Pakistan versus Zimbabwe, you can predict for each of these matches and win a lot of points. And also, you can win some cash back and some interesting cash vouchers. So do not miss out on that opportunity playing on Boom 11.
Yeah.
Take care and have a good time, all of you. Bye bye.
Bye bye, guys.